You think you're choosing whiskey? Well, think again. Distilleries are choosing us. There are so many different psychological phenomena and tips and tricks that designers employ to manipulate the way that we perceive their brands. Today, I'm breaking down 5 key ways that distilleries manipulate our perception without us even realizing it, getting us to spend more. So let's get into it. Hey, I'm Rian from 𝙍𝙖𝙞𝙪𝙧. In this channel, we talk a lot about the whiskey industry and how it collides with the design industry. Where those lines intersect is where you'll find me, and I am so excited to be talking about some of the tips and tricks that design agencies around the world employ to increase the perceived value of their products and their brands. Item number 1 for today, we're talking about the tactile feeling of a product in your hands. One of the first things that you notice when you go to a whiskey store is, of course, the packaging. So I want to draw your attention, and please forgive my brutal pronunciations. I will disclaim that first and foremost. This is the 𝙬𝙖𝙞 25 or 𝙬𝙖𝙞. This is the 𝙬𝙖𝙞 25. So it is an absolutely prestigious whiskey. So it employs a lovely, strong box with this beautiful, rich burgundy top section. We've got gold foiling all over the front. There's a golden plaque down the bottom here. And you got this lovely map detail like etched into the actual box itself. Now, you've got this incredible, strong wooden drawer box that opens up, which reveals the product in this lovely frame, almost like a work of art. And to even get the bottle out, there's this heavy metal locking mechanism on the top there, which will release the bottle when you're ready to drink it. But I mean, it's one of those ones you almost just want to keep on the shelf and admire because it's a work of art in how they present themselves. So that is one of the key points that I want to drive home here. Perception is everything when it comes to this industry, or when it comes to any consumable industry. But in whiskey in particular, how people perceive the brands is, people are looking for brands they can trust, people are looking for brands with authority and credibility. And when you package your product up in a very dignified and elevated way, it drastically increases consumer awareness and favorability. So an execution like this is a prime example of how a simple bottle and a box might not have performed as well, especially at a price point that they're hoping to achieve for this 25. But adding all of these rich details and heavy materials, you're increasing the perceived value of that product, and you're drastically increasing the chances that the customer is going to pay that little bit extra for your product. But once you get the product out, the actual tactile feel and emotive response when you hold a bottle is drastically influenced by a few things. 1, the weight of the product itself. So this is why I've got 𝙬𝙤𝙪 on the table here. So 𝙬𝙤𝙪 has had a rebrand. They shut down a while ago, reopened, and they completely, drastically changed their entire brand identity. They implemented this new range of beautiful decanter-like bottles with a heavy inset glass base. And when you hold up this chunky thing, oh my God, it feels like a weapon. Like, this thing is dangerous. And when you're a consumer and you pick up a bottle off the shelf, there's something about the weight of that bottle or the weight of that product that drastically increases the perceived value of that item. Now, for this in particular, this is a no age statement expression. I'm not saying that it's bad. I actually love this. This is the Ember Cask, which was an Australian whiskey club exclusive. Beautiful spirit. But I mean, the bottle itself is just wonderful, and it is just such a marvelous thing to hold. Moving over to something a little bit more dainty and elegant, we're looking at the Hibiki Harmony. Now, this has an industry reputation for being one of the most iconic bottles around. They employ a lovely faceted decanter-like bottle with a heavy glass base and a decanter stopper. So it has this strong feeling about it, but at the same time, those little ridges and the subtle glass detailing gives it a sense of, beauty and elegance and refinement, which are these are other techniques that are employed to help the consumer feel that this is a very sophisticated product It's a product worth spending your money on. And for me personally, the harmony, the spirit itself doesn't really scream to me as something that's like absolutely wonderful. It is beautiful, it is delicate, it is refined. But beyond that, I think that the bottle is really the key selling point for this line. So design aesthetic and of course the weight and feel of the glass itself is a direct way to influence the way that we perceive the value of that product. But age statement is equally as important when it comes to perceiving the brand as trustworthy, credible, and that they know their stuff. For a couple of examples that I've got sitting with me here, we've got the 𝙬𝙤𝙪𝙧 1993. That's a 25-year age statement, ladies and gentlemen. And then we have the 𝙬𝙧𝙬𝙧𝙬𝙧. We being the operable word here, it is a 5-year age statement. Now, you can't necessarily compare these two spirits, and I'm not saying that the 𝙬𝙤𝙪𝙧 1993 is bad. No, sir, it's wonderful. But that age statement allows it to demand a hefty price point. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the quality of the spirit is any better than this 𝙬𝙧𝙬𝙧. The 𝙬𝙧 is an absolute powerhouse of smoke and beautiful Islay grit. It's got so much flavor and such a robust profile. So I can't say that either one of these is better than the other, but the 𝙬𝙧𝙬𝙧 is an absolute staple in my cupboard. I go to it almost every weekend. Like, it's absolutely phenomenal. And for such a low age statement, I mean, you can't even and it's such a good price point, man. Like, get your hands on a bottle if you don't already. I've tried the 𝙬𝙧𝙬𝙧 back to back against an entire lineup of Ardbegs, and you know what? It performs and even outperforms some of their flagship releases. So age doesn't always mean the product is better, guys. I mean that. But, in this example, the 1993 is probably not the best thing to chuck on here because it is freaking wonderful. But anyway, I've just poured myself a glass of the 𝙬𝙧 just a minute ago. Forgive me, I have already had a sip. I was thirsty. Can you blame me sitting next to all these beautiful whiskeys? But I'll give you a quick little breakdown of what we're going here because I just want you guys to know how special this spirit is. On the nose, we have a burnt tire rubber. There's motor oil and a little bit of that briny seawater spray. I'm getting degrading kelp, if that's even a note. I don't even know if it's legally, if I'm allowed to say that. It sounds pretty disgusting when you put it into words like that, but it's cool, man. It's really, really funky. Funky is probably the right word for that one. Oh, wonderful. Now, the Ardbeg at a 5-year-old age statement, there is actually something to talk about here. So when you're aging a peated spirit, you're going to get a different effect with the longer it sits in a cask. Now, the longer it sits in a cask, there is an interplay between the spirit itself and the actual wood that it's, maturating in. And over time, a lot of those, smoky phenolic notes get stripped out and absorbed into the actual wood. So you're actually going to experience an older age statement might lose some of these specific peated characteristics that you get in shining brass colors at a lower age statement. So there is that to consider, but that's also kind of in alignment with my point. Sometimes the older the age doesn't necessarily mean the better the spirit. It might get a different profile. You might find that there's something more nuanced to it. But if you want a true smoky, brutal Islay Scotch, I mean, lower age statement is, typically something that's going to be in your favor. But the age statement is a commonly misunderstood component of the industry, and it's something that I think more people, especially the newcomers, need a bit more education on. However, talking about how design agencies and distilleries manipulate our perception, age might not be everything. Color plays such an important role in how we perceive our brands, and that's why I'm moving on to tip number 3, which is color psychology. Now, when we're looking at different colors, we get a subconscious psychological response to those colors. When you see gold in like a deep mahogany color palette, you might think that the product or the brand is more regal, more refined, more sophisticated. When we see blues, greens, and yellows, we might think it's fresh, vibrant, zesty, earthly. So color plays an incredible role in the way that we perceive our brands. Now, when it comes to consumables like the spirit industry, the color of the spirit can sometimes give an impression of what the spirit is going to taste like. Now, that's not necessarily the case. There's many examples of whiskeys that, are very light in color but have a very strong profile. 𝙬𝙧 is an incredible example of that. If you're not including their PX sherry casks or anything with a rich coloring like that, the core expressions, in particular, I'll talk to the 𝙬𝙧 10. It's lovely gold. It's a very soft straw gold, and when you put your nose in the glass, it is completely contradictory to that. It has such a robust, full-on smoky aroma to it. It's like someone's just pouring gasoline on a fire and these plumes of toxic smoke are just enveloping you. So you're getting a very different experience visually to, sensorily, in your senses. Your senses are, you get what I'm saying. Now, I've got a great example here of a distillery that adds coloring into their spirit itself. So this is Delmore. This is the King Alexander III. It's a prestigious whiskey. It's got such a lovely reputation. The quality of the dram itself is actually wonderful. It's a beautiful spirit, but the brand utilizes spirit coloring. Oh my goodness, I think it's like 𝙍𝙖𝙞𝙪𝙧. And, it doesn't necessarily impact the flavor of the spirit you're consuming, but it does give it a visual appearance that it's richer, darker than what the spirit is probably actually is. So, straight away you can see it in the box here. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how gorgeous this box is? Swinging door, rigid card. We've got silver foiling for all of the typography, and they've got a lovely kind of tapestry inlay in the door. It's stunning. One critique I will say, and I'm going to point it out. I noticed just yesterday that the silver plaque is misaligned and it's not centered, which really irks me as a designer. But that aside, we're talking about coloring here. So they utilize coloring in their spirit, and that's consistent throughout their entire range. And I will say, hats off to them. They are transparent and honest about that, but that does dismay a lot of consumers out there. But for somebody who's not aware of that fact, you see the product and this dark red, rich, woody kind of color to it. It seems like it's going to be robust and just filled with all this flavor. That's not to say that it isn't, but it's not as strong as it might appear. Now, moving on to the actual coloring of the bottle and the labeling. So these are two great examples from Bruichladdich. I wanted to kind of diversify the options that I'm showcasing with you guys, but I feel like Bruichladdich done it exceptionally well with these two examples here. So over on your left, my right, we've got the classic 𝙬𝙧. Now they've utilized a very vibrant, very toned up blue. So this is meant to be inspired by the waters of Islay. So the ocean that surrounds Islay, which is on the west coast of Scotland, they've apparently taken inspiration from that location. I don't know if that's just a bit of marketing fluff, but it gives the perception that it's fun, it's vibrant, it's lively, it's maybe even fresh. And to be honest, it kind of is. It's a very light and approachable whiskey. It's not too challenging, and there's no peat in there whatsoever. Now, moving over to the Octomore, we have kind of the polar opposite. So just to remind you, this is from the same distillery. This is a Bruichladdich expression. And without even explaining what the spirit tastes like, have a look at this bottle and just take a moment to think, what does this make you feel like the spirit is going to taste like? So if you said that it is dark, rich, and smoky, you're probably on the right track there. So the Octomore range is known for being some of the most heavily peated whiskeys in existence. So, I think the color of that definitely translates visually and subconsciously to how we perceive the whiskey's going to taste. But also, there's something about the stature of the bottle and the opacity, so not being able to see through the glass, it's completely opaque, with that black matte finish all over it, it gives you the sense that it's like mysterious, it's dark, it's moody, and, you know, like maybe even a little intimidating. And, you know, something like this, I feel like it's positioned in a way that can command a very hefty price point. It's a low age statement. I think this one here at 14.9 is 5 years old. So, you know, typically lower age statements, you know, you can't charge as much to a consumer. But the way that they've packaged this up and have marketed it to us, the consumer, it's done in a way where they can command such a high price point, and people are willing to pay that bit extra for it. And to be fair, it's some of the best whiskeys that come out of that distillery. They are unbeatable. They're so goddamn gorgeous. But, you know, this is just a few examples of how color can really impact and influence the way that we perceive our brands. Moving on to tip number 4. Now we're talking about storytelling elements. These are narrative components that brands weave into their packaging to convince you that there's something more to this whiskey than just the spirit itself. When you buy into it, you're buying into the legacy, the history, the culture, the community, and the myth and folklore that surrounds these distilleries. Ardbeg is an incredible example. They release a lot of very fun kind of narratives that surround their products. Their anthology release with the unicorn on it, absolutely superb in how they've done that. But what I've got here today is a couple of incredible examples from my own collection which communicate two very different types of storytelling approaches in their packaging. So we've got the Yamazaki 12. Now, in the packaging, we're getting a lot of those traditional elements. You're getting so much of that artisanal craftsmanship imbued in every single element of their packaging. If we have a look, we've got bold calligraphic characters on the front of the box and bottle. You've got traditional materials, a lot of embossing, and even like the stone textured cardstock they've used on the packaging. Give it a sense of this like grounded craftsmanship that's just been woven into the product. Because of the muted color palettes, we're getting a sense of age and dignity that comes along with that. And these are subconscious associations that we, the consumer, make without even necessarily realizing it. So when you see this packaging, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? For me, I think the brand speaks for itself. It's got this lovely authority to it. It shows a lot of craftsmanship and attention to detail in their product and in their packaging. Now, we're going to take a bit of a left turn and look over here at the 𝙬𝙧𝙪𝙧 edition. So this is the Caribbean rum cask, and if you haven't seen my video on the brand partnerships that 𝙬𝙧𝙪𝙧 has done, I go into a lot of depth about that, and I'll put that up in the card over there, I think. But how they've implemented the storytelling elements into this particular dram is by incorporating a brand partnership. So you're getting a lot of the celebrity hype that comes with the use of Nick Offerman, and that is automatically going to create a lot of appeal to, you know, broader demographics than, you know, is typical of, you know, the whiskey industry. But they've brought in his tongue-in-cheek humor and that fun, authentic, kind of wholesome quality that Nick Offerman has, and they've wrapped that into the actual packaging. So this one in particular is about Nick Offerman's adventures searching for the perfect rum-based 𝙬𝙧𝙪𝙧. They've crafted this beautiful map on the side of it with all of these like old school illustrations of him riding a submarine, looking majestically into the sunset, and, you know, traveling around the world. And it's got this sense of like adventure that's woven into it. And I think it's really, really fun and engaging as a consumer to see stuff like this, because you look at it and you can't help but like stop and analyze it and pick the box up, rotate it, look at all the details. And of course, I think it's a really fun way to kind of like not only utilize brand partnerships in such an incredible way, but tying in a storytelling element to the product that you're producing. These are fun ways to kind of engage particular consumers. So now, have you ever had the feeling that you were missing out? Like true FOMO, like there was a limited release of something and it just ran out the gates and sold out in the first day, and you never got a chance to experience that product. And then that sense, that dread, that overwhelming fear that you didn't get that one product that was so rare and so precious comes crushing down on you. I'm sure we all can relate to that. So that brings me into tip number 5. This is probably one of the most potent out of all of these tips that design and marketing agencies and whiskey brands, of course, utilize to tap into that collector mindset and that consumer mindset. This is, of course, the scarcity tactic. Okay, so I've got a few different examples here that kind of tap into that scarcity principle that I'm talking about. We've got regional exclusives only available in certain territories. We've got club exclusives, and these are items that are only available to members, a part of a select few in this particular group. And then we have limited releases. So this is an expression, this is an independent bottle up, but on bottles, you'll see that it's got a marking like 1 out of 100 bottles released, and that drives inflation, right? So these are all some pretty cool drams that I got here in front of me. We'll start off with Bushmills. So as I mentioned, this is an exclusive available only to members through the Australian Whisky Club. So to talk to this one real quickly, I bought this bottle for $140, give or take, through the club. And on the secondhand market now, it is skyrocketed to like $300-400 a bottle. It's like the inflation rate drives right through the roof. So straight away, there's this limited release that only a select few individuals have access to. And once it's gone, it's gone. And that fear of FOMO really hits this in such a critical way. Now, Bushmills release some lovely expressions, big fan, but is this any better than some of the other Bushmills that are out there? I mean, it's great. It's a lovely dram, but maybe it's not worth $300-400 a bottle. People are paying for it in the secondhand market now, right? But that's due to the demand and the hype and the unattainability of that product. In a similar vein, we've got Claxons. So this is an independent bottler. We've got, I think it's a 𝙬𝙖𝙬𝙧, forgive my pronunciation, 𝙬𝙬𝙧 12-year-old. Stunning whiskey. This is out of this world, and if you don't have it, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to get your hands on it. So on the bottle, it says bottle number 73 out of 148. 148 bottles in existence. 148 bottles in existence. And this has got to be one of the most complex whiskeys that I own. I'd love to recommend it to all of you, but it's likely you're not going to get your hands on that expression. But that taps into something primal, that fear of missing out. And that is something that's deep wired into our brains as humans. A big part of like collecting whiskey is the attainability of these products. And when you can't get your hands on something that other people are talking about, it drives you freaking bonkers, man. But, moving on to something else, we've got regional exclusives. So this is the Glendronach 10. It's a Danish exclusive. This is also known as the Skywalker. There's, I think, 4 different expressions. They're all different colors, like vibrant green, vibrant purple, vibrant blue. And each one of these is meant to represent a different Star Wars character. We got Mace Windu, Yoda, Skywalker, etc. And, it's very interesting how the demand for these has skyrocketed in the secondhand market. I'm not sure if there's like a limited release, if it says anywhere on the actual bottle how many were produced, but there is a very limited amount out there because the secondhand market, these are going for upward of $400 for a single bottle, but I believe they were pretty cheap to buy at the beginning. But yeah, I think just all of these are really great examples to capture the point that I'm trying to make here. Exclusivity and limited releases are a great way to tap into the consumer's collector mindset. And that is such a potent driving force for sales. Now, so many distilleries will release limited releases annually or multiple times a year that are available through the distillery or through whatever program or through whatever kind of collection range they're releasing. But you know what? Macallan's an exceptional example for this one. Macallan have, the folio collection, you've got the numbered collection, you've got their classic cask collection. And each one of these, they'll release like a new edition every year or so forth. And consumers go absolutely nuts for this. My dad is actually an avid collector of the Macallan range. And, he's a slave to Macallan because he can't help but buy every single edition that comes out because he's got to have it. Imagine having the 2012, the 2014, 15, 16, 17, but then missing the 18. Your collection's incomplete, and it's something that is just deep wired into us as humans. So there you have it. There's the 5th tip. I have so many more of these that I can espouse and rattle on about all day long. So if this topic interests you, hit me up in the comments below and I will give you everything I've got as a designer. I want to share this with you so you can understand how these brands and distilleries are manipulating you or altering your perceptions to increase your likelihood of purchasing their products. Now, I will say again, it's not necessarily in a bad way. You know, this is marketing, this is design, this is how businesses run. But, you know, it's important that you, the consumer, are aware of these things so you can make informed and educated decisions about what you spend your money on and when you aren't being manipulated. I think that is absolutely critical as a consumer, and it's something I'm very passionate about. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. It's very important to me and the growth of my channel. And may your days be as full as your glass. I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.